My name is Elise Hartman, and for most of my life, I learned to recognize love by subtraction. It wasn't the things my family gave me that taught me this, it was the things they didn't. The silences. The absences. The way my name fell out of conversations as if it had never belonged there in the first place. I'm 32 years old now, old enough to understand that families don't usually fracture in one dramatic moment. They erode. Slowly, quietly, with politeness. With smiles that never quite reach the eyes. If you asked anyone outside our family who the Hartmans were, they'd tell you we were solid. Dependable, respectable. The kind of family neighbors trusted to water their plants and return borrowed ladders. The kind that sent out holiday cards with coordinated outfits and tasteful fonts. On paper, we were perfect. In real life, there was always a gap, and somehow I was the one standing in it. My father, Robert Hartman, spent 36 years as a civil engineer for the same firm. He believed in routine, loyalty, and never rocking the boat. He ironed his shirts every Sunday night and never missed a mortgage payment. He had a gentle voice and a habit of deferring decisions until someone else made them for him. My mother, Lorraine, was the center of gravity. She had once worked as a junior loan officer at a regional bank before deciding, her word, that full-time motherhood was a better use of her talents. She was elegant in a way that felt studied, practiced. The kind of woman who remembered people's job titles but forgot their birthdays. Then there was my sister, Vivian Hartman, 3 years older. Effortlessly accomplished. The kind of child teachers described as a pleasure to have in class and strangers assumed was going places. She moved through life as though it had been calibrated for her success. Private prep school, top-tier university, graduate degree that came with letters people respected, and then there was me. I was the second daughter, the quiet one, the one who learned early that being low maintenance was a survival strategy. Growing up, Vivian's bedroom sat at the front of the house. 2 large windows. Built-in shelving, a walk-in closet that could have passed for a small office. Mine was at the back, smaller, narrower, one window that looked directly into the neighbor's fence. When Vivian needed more storage for debate trophies or extra shoes, my mother would say, "Elise won't mind, she doesn't need much." And she was right. I learned not to need much. When Vivian turned 16, my parents threw her a backyard party with catering trays and a hired DJ. Lorraine spent weeks coordinating linens and lights. Robert grilled chicken and beamed like he'd personally raised a future senator. When I turned 16, my mother suggested we do something low-key. Then my birthday landed on a weekday, Vivian had a college visit that weekend, and somehow nothing happened at all. I told myself it didn't matter. I got very good at telling myself that. There is one image that stayed with me long after I stopped questioning it. A framed photo on the living room bookshelf. Taken the winter Vivian finished graduate school. My parents stood on either side of her in front of a Christmas tree, arms around her shoulders, all 3 of them smiling with the satisfaction of something completed. I wasn't in the picture. When I asked about it, my mother didn't even look embarrassed. The frame was too small, she said. We had to crop it. Crop, as if I were excess margin. I laughed it off at the time. Pretended it was funny. But that was the moment I learned something important. If there wasn't enough space for everyone, I would be the one removed. The day I graduated high school was warm and unremarkable. June air heavy with sunscreen and freshly cut grass. I wore a borrowed cap and gown that smelled faintly of someone else's perfume. I walked across the stage at 2:41 p.m. I shook the principal's hand. I smiled at the camera. I scanned the crowd. My parents weren't there. They were several states away touring a campus with Vivian, who was considering a competitive fellowship program. Lorraine had explained it over the phone a week earlier. Vivian's timeline is tight, she'd said. You'll understand. I told her I did. I didn't. The only person who showed up was Aunt Celeste, my mother's younger sister. She drove nearly 2 hours from Providence, sat in the 3rd row, and cheered loudly enough that the woman next to her jumped. Afterward, she took me to dinner at a quiet Italian place near the school and gave me a card with cash tucked inside. They did this to me too, she said gently, as if confessing something she'd been holding for years. Different circumstances, same feeling. I didn't know how to respond. She squeezed my hand. You're not invisible, Elise. They just don't know how to look properly. At 18, I believed that meant they would learn. At 32, I knew better. I worked through college. Community college first. Then a state university after my parents explained they couldn't afford two expensive educations. 3 years later, they helped Vivian with a down payment on a condo near the harbor. It was an investment, Lorraine said. You'll understand when you're older. I did understand. I understood that resources appeared when they served a narrative. I became an accountant because it was practical, because it paid steadily. Because no one ever questioned its usefulness, even if no one bragged about it either. By my late 20s, I lived alone in a studio apartment with a view of brick and fire escapes. I made decent money, saved carefully, and rarely asked for help. I told myself independence was enough. But somewhere underneath, a smaller voice kept whispering the same thing it always had. Maybe if I give enough, they'll see me. The message arrived on a Tuesday evening. A photo in the family group chat. Vivian's hand, manicured and angled just right. A diamond that caught the light even through a phone screen. The background suggested a waterfront restaurant, linen, candlelight money. The caption read, "He asked, I said yes." The responses flooded in immediately. Lorraine, my beautiful girl. This is everything. Robert, a cousin I barely knew, stunning ring. I typed and erased 3 messages before settling on, "Congratulations, Vive, I'm happy for you." No one replied. 2 weeks later, the invitation arrived. Heavy paper, embossed lettering. A custom monogram that intertwined her initials with his, Vivian Hartman and Oliver Ashford. The venue, the Ashford Estate, Newport, Rhode Island. Accommodation details followed. Discounted rooms starting at $480 per night. I sat at my small kitchen table holding the invitation and made a decision that would quietly change everything. This time, I wouldn't fade into the background. This time, I would show them my value. The next morning, I opened a new savings account. I labeled it wedding gift. I didn't tell anyone. I skipped lunches out. Brewed my own coffee. Passed on trips and upgrades and small indulgences that made life easier but savings slower. When my winter coat split at the seam, I stitched it myself. When friends asked why I never joined weekend getaways, I said I was being responsible. What I didn't say was that I was trying to buy something that had always been withheld. Recognition. Belonging, proof. 3 years earlier, I might have questioned the impulse. Now, it felt necessary. About a month after the engagement, Lorraine called. Her tone was light, almost cheerful. "Elise, have you thought about what you're giving Vivian?" "I have," I said carefully. "Well," she continued, "your father and I were thinking it might be easier if everyone combined gifts. That way it looks cohesive. I'd prefer to give it myself," I said. There was a pause. "Oh," she said. "Well, do what you want." She hung up before I could respond. I stared at my phone longer than I should have. The signs were already there. I just wasn't ready to read them. The invitation list was where the story first began to fracture in ways I could no longer explain away as coincidence. At first, everything still looked normal from the outside. Vivian was engaged. Lorraine was energized in that sharp, efficient way she got when there was something important to manage. Robert nodded along to whatever plans were placed in front of him. If you glanced at us from a distance, you'd think this was simply a family preparing for a wedding. But up close, the omissions had started. They always did. Vivian moved quickly once the engagement became public. Tastings, fittings, consultations. Her life turned into a rotating calendar of decisions that all somehow carried moral weight. Every choice was framed as important, necessary, non-negotiable. She called me one evening while I was cooking pasta in my apartment. "Just wanted to loop you in," she said. "We've booked the Ashford estate. It's stunning." "I saw it online," I replied. "It's beautiful." "Yes, well," she hesitated, "it's also structured." Very curated. Curated was becoming one of her favorite words. "That's great," I said. "Let me know if you need help with anything." There was a pause, then a soft laugh. "Oh, we've got it covered." Oliver's mother is very involved. I didn't know Elise Ashford well at that point. I'd met her once, At a holiday brunch where she wore pearls and spoke with the calm authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. She had been polite, distant, and unmistakably observant. I would come to understand her better later. About 2 months into planning, Lorraine hosted a small, family coordination dinner at their house. Vivian was there, of course. So were 2 cousins I barely knew, one of Vivian's college friends and me. We sat around the dining table, plates arranged carefully, wine poured before anyone asked. Papers were spread between the serving dishes, menus, venue layouts, seating charts in early drafts. Lorraine tapped one of the pages with her manicured nail. "We're finalizing numbers," she said. "The Ashfords are very particular about balance." "Balance?" I asked. "Yes," Vivian said quickly. "Family, friends, professional connections." "It's not just a wedding, Elise." I nodded, though I wasn't entirely sure what that meant. Lorraine slid a page closer to herself, subtly pulling it away from me. I caught a glimpse of names, grouped into columns. My name wasn't there. I told myself it was an early draft. The bridal party was announced the following week. Vivian posted a carefully edited photo on social media. 6 women in matching robes, champagne flutes raised, sunlight streaming through a luxury hotel window. Her caption read, "Couldn't do this without my girls. I wasn't one of them. I hadn't expected to be. Not really. But expectation and hope are close cousins, and I felt the sting anyway." Lorraine called later that night. "You understand, right?" she said, not waiting for an answer. "Vivian had to be selective. Appearances matter." "Of course," I replied. I was always saying that. It was Aunt Celeste who said the thing no one else would. We met for coffee one afternoon, halfway between her shop and my apartment. She studied me over the rim of her mug. "They're shrinking you," she said plainly. "I'm fine," I replied automatically. She shook her head. "No, Elise, they're rearranging the room so you don't disrupt the picture." I laughed weakly. "It's just a wedding. That's what it always is," she said. "Until it is." The rehearsal dinner invitations went out digitally. I found out because I wasn't on the list. Vivian called when I asked about it, her tone tight. "It's just the wedding party and immediate family," she said. "I am immediate family." "Yes, but," she sighed, "the Ashfords are hosting. They have constraints." I didn't argue, I never did, but something shifted that night. Not anger, not yet. Recognition. My savings account crossed a threshold I'd been watching for months. $10,000. The number felt unreal when I saw it on the screen. It represented 3 years of restraint, discipline, and quiet sacrifice. I went to the bank the next morning. The teller asked if I wanted a cashier's check. "Yes," I said. "Please." I held the envelope in my hands afterward, surprised by how light it felt for something that had cost me so much. That night I wrote Vivian a letter. Simple, polite, earnest. I took a photo of everything before sealing it. I didn't know why. 3 weeks before the wedding, Lorraine called. "Have you finalized your gift?" she asked. "Yes." "Well," she said, "it might be easier if you sent it to me. I can include it with ours. I'd rather give it myself." The silence on the other end was sharp. "Fine," she said finally. "Do what you want." She hung up. This time, I didn't tell myself it was nothing. The confirmation came from an unexpected place. Mara, one of Vivian's friends from business school, cornered me at a pre-wedding cocktail event I'd been invited to at the last minute. "You're not on the main seating plan," she said casually, as if discussing weather. "I'm not," she frowned. "That's strange. I assumed you were opting out." "Opting out of what?" "The reception dinner." My chest tightened. "Why would I do that?" She looked confused. "I don't know. I just heard your name was flagged." "Flagged?" I smiled, thanked her, and excused myself to the restroom. I stared at my reflection for a long time. For the first time, I allowed myself to consider the possibility that this wasn't oversight. It was design. I could have confronted Vivian then. I could have called Lorraine and demanded answers. I didn't, because some part of me still believed that if I waited, if I showed up quietly and generously, it would resolve itself. That belief had shaped my entire life. And it was about to cost me everything I'd worked to give. If there was a moment when I could still have stepped away cleanly, it was the week the seating chart appeared. I didn't know that then. I only felt the dull pressure of something tightening, slowly, deliberately, around a part of me that had learned to endure discomfort without complaint. By that point, the wedding had become its own ecosystem. Emails, updates, itinerary changes. Vivian's life was a stream of confirmations and approvals, and everyone else orbited around it, adjusting their schedules accordingly, including me. The seating chart arrived by accident. It came as a forwarded email from my mother, sent without comment, attached beneath a message clearly meant for someone else. I recognized the subject line immediately. My name wasn't in the body of Lorraine's message. There was no explanation, just the attachment. For a few seconds, I considered not opening it. That instinct to protect myself by not knowing was familiar, old, comfortable in a painful way. Then I opened the file. The document was meticulously organized, tables numbered. Guests grouped by category. Color-coded labels indicating family, business associates, close friends. I scrolled slowly. Hartman family, Table 3 Ashford family, Tables 1 and 2 Vivian's friends, Tables 4, 5, 6 my name did not appear under family, or friends, or anywhere. I searched the document. Nothing. Then I noticed something else. At the bottom of the list, separated by a thin line, was a small section titled, 3 names. Mine was the second. The phrase sat there, clean and impersonal, as if it were a reasonable classification instead of a deliberate exclusion. I read it again. Ceremony only, no reception seating, no dinner, no table. No place. I closed my laptop and sat very still. I waited for the familiar rush of self-correction to arrive, the voice that would explain this away, soften it, make it my fault. It didn't come. Instead, something else surfaced. A memory. I was 9 years old, standing in the hallway during one of Vivian's birthday parties. The house was full of noise, laughter, music, children running between rooms. Lorraine knelt in front of me, adjusting the hem of my sweater. "Why don't you stay in the den for a bit?" she said. "Your sister has guests. I want to play too," she smiled tightly. "Elise, don't make this difficult." Then she opened the coat closet door. I stood there for 20 minutes, listening to the party continue without me. At the time, I told myself it made sense. Now, staring at the seating chart decades later, I realized something chilling. They hadn't changed, they'd just gotten better at justifying it. I picked up my phone. Vivian's name hovered at the top of my contacts. I imagined what I would say. Why am I not seated? Why am I classified as overflow? Why does this keep happening? I pictured her response, measured, defensive, framed in logistics. "It's not personal, you're being sensitive. You don't understand how these things work." I put the phone down, not because I agreed, because I already knew the answer. I drove to Providence the next day. Aunt Celeste was arranging flowers in the back of her shop when I arrived. She took one look at my face and set the shears down. "They did something," she said. I handed her my phone. She read the document carefully, then looked up at me. "They're excluding you on purpose." The words landed with a strange calm. "Yes," I said. She exhaled slowly. "Do they know you've seen this?" "No." "Good," she said. "Then you still have information." I frowned. "Information for what?" She studied me for a moment. "That depends on what you want." I didn't answer. Not yet. That night, back in my apartment, I opened the envelope again. $10,000. I laid it on the table and stared at it like it might explain itself. For years, I had treated the gift as proof of love, of loyalty, of worth. Something tangible I could offer in exchange for inclusion. But now, knowing I wasn't meant to stay for dinner, the money felt grotesque. A contribution without a seat. A sacrifice without acknowledgement. I wondered if Vivian knew how much it was. I wondered if she would care. 2 days later, my mother called. Her voice was brisk, almost cheerful. "Elise, just checking in," she said. "You sound a bit distant lately." "I saw the seating chart," I replied. There was a pause, then, another pause. "That wasn't finalized," she said quickly. "You shouldn't read into it. My name is under ceremony only." "Yes, well," she said. "The Ashfords have a certain way of doing things. I'm your daughter. Don't be dramatic." The words hit harder than I expected. "I'm not asking for anything extra," I said. "I'm asking why I'm being excluded." "You're not excluded," she replied. "You're invited." Invited, as if that were generosity. Lorraine continued, her tone sharpening. Elise, this wedding is not about you. Vivian has worked very hard to be where she is. This is her moment, I know, then don't complicate it. The call ended shortly after. I sat there, phone still in my hand, and felt something break, not loudly, not all at once, but in a way that made repair impossible. It wasn't about space. It wasn't about numbers. It wasn't about the Ashfords. It was about hierarchy. Vivian belonged at the center. My parents belonged beside her, and I belonged where I had always been placed, useful, quiet, peripheral. The seating chart hadn't created that truth. It had simply written it down. That night, I did something I had never done before. I asked myself a question that didn't include anyone else. What do I want? Not what would keep the peace. Not what would make them proud. Not what would prove I was worthy. Just me. The answer came slowly, but when it did, it was unmistakable. I wanted dignity. And for the first time, I understood that dignity might require taking something back. I didn't cancel my flight. I didn't withdraw the money. I didn't confront anyone. Instead, I made a quieter decision, one that felt heavier than all the others combined. I would attend the wedding. I would bring the gift. And I would not protect them from the consequences of what they had chosen. Not anymore. The exclusion became official the night of the rehearsal dinner, not through an announcement. Not through confrontation. Through absence, clean, intentional, and wrapped in etiquette. The final wedding itinerary arrived 3 days before the ceremony. It was a polished PDF with the Ashford crest at the top, and a color-coded schedule that accounted for nearly every waking hour. Friday afternoon, bridal party rehearsal, family photos rehearsal dinner, private Saturday. Ceremony reception under my name, there was a single line, no address listed for Friday evening. No explanation, just omission. I stared at the screen longer than I should have, then closed the email without replying. The Ashford estate rose from the coastline like something preserved rather than lived in. White stone, manicured hedges, iron gates that curved inward as if to contain whatever passed through them. I arrived Friday afternoon, earlier than necessary. The air smelled of salt and clipped greenery. Valise in pressed uniforms moved with practiced efficiency. Everything about the place communicated control. I checked into a nearby hotel using my own name, not the block reserved for family. That distinction had already been made. That evening, I dressed carefully, not formally but neatly. A soft blue dress, low heels, neutral, unobtrusive. I told myself I was only there to drop something off. The rehearsal dinner was being held in a glass-walled pavilion overlooking the water. I could see it from the path that curved around the main house, warm lights, white tablecloths, people laughing with the ease of those who knew they belonged. I approached the entrance. A young woman with a tablet stopped me. Name, Elise Hartman, she scanned the list. I'm sorry, she said politely. This event is private. I'm family, I replied. She looked genuinely apologetic. I don't see your name, I nodded. Thank you. I stepped back before she could say anything else. No scene, no protest, just confirmation. I turned to leave and heard my mother's voice. Elise, she was stepping out onto the terrace, a glass of wine in hand. Vivian followed close behind her, radiant in white, already halfway into her role. You're early, Lorraine said, glancing behind me. I was nearby, I replied. Just wanted to say hello. Vivian's smile faltered for half a second. Oh, she said, we're about to start. I know. An awkward pause settled between us. Well, Lorraine said, adjusting her shawl, we'll see you tomorrow. Yes, I said. Vivian leaned in and lowered her voice. Don't make this weird, Elise. I looked at her. I'm not, I said. I'm leaving, and I did. I took the longer path back toward the exit, moving through a side corridor that connected the pavilion to the main house. I assumed it would be empty. I was wrong. The voices reached me before I reached them. I slowed, then I stopped. She's always been like this, Lorraine was saying, overly sensitive. Another voice, calm, measured. She won't cause a problem, will she? This one I recognized as a leaner Ashford. Vivian laughed lightly. She never does, that's the point. There was a pause, then Lorraine again. We made sure she's not seated. I didn't want any tension. Good, Alina replied. It's cleaner this way. Cleaner, I stood very still. Besides, Vivian continued, she should be grateful to be invited at all. She doesn't really fit with the rest of the guests. Elena hummed thoughtfully. Some people don't, Lorraine sighed. She means well, she just doesn't know her place. There it was, not confusion, not oversight, not miscommunication. Intent. I waited, not sure what I was waiting for. An apology, a softening. It didn't come. Instead, Elena said, as long as she behaves tomorrow. Vivian laughed again. She will, she always does. I stepped back before they could see me. My hands were shaking, but my mind was terrifyingly clear. For years, I had wondered if I was imagining things, if I was too sensitive, too quiet, too eager. Standing alone in that hallway, listening to my family discuss my exclusion as a logistical necessity, something inside me went silent. Not hurt. Acceptance. They knew exactly what they were doing. And they expected me to cooperate. I left the estate grounds and walked until my phone rang. Aunt Celeste. I heard, she said. Heard what? I wasn't invited either, she said softly. I figured that told me everything. I stopped walking. I'm sorry, I said. She paused. Don't be, it clarified things. I told her what I'd overheard. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she said, then you owe them nothing. I know. And the gift. I looked out at the dark water beyond the path. I'm still bringing it. There was silence. Then, are you sure? Yes, I said, but not the way they expect. Back in my hotel room, I placed the envelope on the desk. $10,000. It no longer felt like an offering. It felt like leverage. I slept deeply that night, without the familiar knot of anxiety in my chest. For the first time, I wasn't trying to earn my place. I was preparing to reclaim it. The morning of the wedding arrived clear and unseasonably warm, the kind of day that photographers love and nerves resent. Sunlight filled my hotel room in steady sheets, illuminating the envelope on the desk like it had been placed there deliberately. I stood for a moment, watching dust motes drift through the light, and felt an unexpected calm settle over me. This wasn't dread. It was clarity. I dressed without ceremony. No matching robes. No hairstylist knocking at the door. No schedule to follow. Just me, a simple navy dress I'd chosen months ago, and the quiet hum of the hotel's air system. As I fastened my necklace, I caught my reflection in the mirror and paused. I looked steady, not hopeful, not anxious, present. I slipped the envelope into my bag, checked out, and drove toward the estate. The Ashford estate was already alive with movement. Cars lined the drive. Guests stepped out in tailored suits and flowing dresses, greeted by attendants who guided them with practiced smiles. Everything unfolded with the precision of a well-funded production. I handed my keys to the valet. "Ceremony guest," he said, reading my name from the list. "Yes," I replied. He placed a thin white card in my hand. It wasn't a place card. It was a badge. It was small, rectangular, clipped to a simple lanyard. At the top, in discreet lettering, were the words, nothing else, no table number, no name, no designation beyond limitation. I stared at it for a moment, then clipped it on. Around me, other guests wore nothing at all, or, in the case of the wedding party, elegant wristbands in a muted gold tone. I stepped into the crowd. People noticed, not immediately, but gradually. A few glances lingered too long. Someone's smile faltered as their eyes dropped to the badge and back up again. A woman I recognized vaguely, one of Oliver's cousins, tilted her head. "Oh," she said, "are you staff?" "No," I replied evenly. "I'm family." Her expression shifted, confusion giving way to something like embarrassment. "Oh," she said again. She didn't ask another question. The ceremony seating was arranged in long, elegant rows facing the ocean. Reserved signs marked the first several rows. I scanned them. Ashford family Hartman family wedding party. I approached an usher. "Where should I sit?" He glanced at my badge. "Anywhere past the reserved section." I nodded and walked further back. I took a seat in the third unreserved row. From there, I could see everything. The music began, guests rose. Vivian appeared at the edge of the aisle, radiant and composed, her dress catching the light just so. Lorraine stood near the front, eyes shining with pride. Robert adjusted his tie, visibly emotional. I watched without resentment. This was her moment. What struck me was how easily they all pretended I wasn't there. The ceremony was beautiful, efficient. Perfectly timed. Applause rose as Vivian and Oliver kissed, and the couple turned to walk back down the aisle. Vivian's eyes scanned the crowd. They found me. For the briefest moment, her expression tightened. Then she smiled. Guests were guided toward the reception area in a gentle flow. Signage directed people clearly. An attendant stood at the junction, checking wristbands. I approached. "Ceremony-only guests will remain here," she said politely, gesturing toward a shaded garden area with chairs and water stations. I followed her direction. The space was lovely in a curated, intentional way. White folding chairs, pitchers of citrus water, a few high-top tables. There were 6 of us, 3 older relatives, 1 distant family friend. A couple I didn't recognize. We sat quietly, the sound of laughter and clinking glassware drifting from the reception pavilion nearby. After 15 minutes, someone spoke. "I thought everyone was invited to the reception," one of the older women said softly. I smiled. "Not everyone." She glanced at my badge. "Oh," the word again, 30 minutes, then 45. No one came to check on us. No announcement was made. The ceremony guests were not forgotten. We were contained. My mother walked through the garden, laughing with a leaner Ashford. She saw me. Her smile faltered, just slightly before she recovered. "Elise," she said. "You made it." "Yes." "Well," she said briskly, "enjoying the weather? It's lovely." She nodded, then turned back to a leaner. They walked on. I checked my phone. The reception was beginning. Speeches would come soon, so would the gift table. I stood. The others watched me with mild curiosity. "I'm going to drop something off," I said. No one stopped me. I followed the sound of music and voices toward the pavilion. No one checked my badge this time. The entrance was open. Inside, tables were arranged in perfect symmetry, each set with name cards, favors, and folded napkins. At the front, a long table gleamed under soft lighting. The gift table sat just to the right of the entrance. It was unattended. I approached it slowly, removed the envelope from my bag, and set it down, square and visible, among the others. I stood there for a moment, hands resting lightly on the edge of the table. Then I turned. I didn't leave the pavilion after placing the envelope on the gift table. That was the first deviation from the role they'd written for me. I stayed. The reception hall buzzed with overlapping conversations and the soft clink of glassware. Servers moved between tables with trays of champagne, offering flutes to guests who accepted without looking down. I took one. No one stopped me. No one asked for my badge. Because inside the pavilion, there were no badges, only assumptions. I walked slowly along the edge of the room, scanning the tables. Each one was marked with a small card in elegant script. Table 1, Table 2 then, names, rows of names. I found my parents immediately. Robert Hartman, Lorraine Hartman. I found Vivian and Oliver at the head table. Surrounded by names that gleamed with proximity. I did not find mine. There was no empty chair waiting to be claimed. "No, we'll squeeze you in." No oversight. Every place was filled. The message was unmistakable. "You are not meant to stay." I felt it before I heard it, a shift in the room's attention. Then my name. "Elise." Lorraine stood a few feet away, her smile tight, eyes darting briefly to the surrounding tables. "What are you doing in here?" she asked quietly. "I brought the gift," I said. I wanted to see it placed properly. Her gaze flicked toward the table, then back to me. "Well," she said, lowering her voice, "you can't linger. The reception is for seated guests." "I don't see my seat." Her jaw tightened. "We discussed this." "No," I said. "You explained it." A few nearby guests had begun to notice the exchange. Lorraine's voice sharpened. "Elise, please don't do this now." "Do what?" "Make a scene." I looked around. "I'm standing," I said. "That's all." She moved toward us with practiced urgency, smile already in place for anyone watching. "What's going on?" she asked. "I'm trying to figure out where I'm supposed to sit," I said. Vivian's smile froze. "You're not," she said softly. "Elise, we talked about this." "No," I replied. "You decided." Her eyes flashed. "This isn't about you." "It never is," I said. The words were quiet, but they carried. A nearby table had gone silent. Someone cleared their throat. Vivian stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're embarrassing me." I met her gaze. You gave me a badge, she flinched. Don't, she said. You classified me as ceremony only, I continued. You seated me nowhere, you still took my money. Her face drained of color. Lorraine hissed, lower your voice. I am, I said. You just don't like what I'm saying. At that moment, Elena Ashford approached. Her eyes went immediately to the envelope on the table. Is this yours? She asked, lifting it slightly. Yes, I said. She glanced at the card, then at me. Her expression shifted, surprise first, then calculation. That's very generous, she said slowly. Vivian's head snapped toward her. What? She asked. Elena didn't answer immediately. She turned the envelope so the amount, written discreetly inside the card, was visible. $10,000. A murmur rippled outward. Elena looked at Vivian. And she isn't seated? The room held its breath. Vivian opened her mouth, then closed it. Lorraine stepped in. This is a misunderstanding. Elena raised a hand. Is it? Her gaze returned to me. You're her sister. Yes, and you're not invited to the reception. I was invited, I said. I was excluded. Silence. Elena's lips pressed together. She looked around the room at the guests, the tables, the carefully constructed hierarchy. Then she said something no one expected. That's unacceptable. Vivian stared at her. Elena, no, Elena said firmly. You don't take a gift like that from someone you won't seat. Her eyes flicked to Oliver, who had joined us, confusion written across his face. Did you know about this? Elena asked him. He hesitated. No, he said. Vivian's composure cracked. It wasn't supposed to be like this, she said. It was exactly like this, I replied. Elena turned to me. There's an empty place at table 2, she said. You can sit there. I looked at the chair she indicated. It was close, visible, prominent. Every eye in the room was on us. For a moment, the old instinct surged, to accept, to smooth things over, to be grateful. Then I shook my head. No, I said. The word landed harder than anything else I'd said all day. I didn't come to be accommodated, I continued. I came because I was invited as family. That invitation was conditional. I reached for the envelope. Elena hesitated, then released it. I'm taking this back, I said, not out of spite, out of self-respect. Vivian's face crumpled. You're ruining my wedding. I met her eyes. You did that when you decided I didn't belong. I turned and walked out of the pavilion. No one stopped me. No one spoke. The music faltered behind me, then resumed, too loud, too forced. Outside, the air was cooler. I breathed deeply. For the first time in my life, I wasn't shrinking. I was leaving on my feet. The silence didn't last forever. It never does. I learned about the rewritten version of events 3 days later. Not from my parents or my sister, but from a coworker who recognized the venue. Hey, she said cautiously as we waited for the elevator, weren't you at a wedding in Newport this weekend? Yes, I replied. She hesitated. I heard something happened. I nodded once. That's one way to put it. She studied my face. People were saying the bride's sister had some kind of breakdown. There it was. I felt a familiar tug, the old instinct to correct, explain, soften. Instead, I asked, is that what they said? More or less, she said, that you caused a scene over seating. I smiled faintly. Interesting. The official narrative solidified quickly. Vivian told friends I had been emotional. Lorraine told relatives I had misunderstood arrangements. Robert told no one anything at all. The unspoken message was clear. Elise is difficult. Elise overreacted. Elise made things uncomfortable. It was a story everyone already knew how to believe. A week later, my phone rang. It was Janet, a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. I just wanted to check on you, she said. Weddings can be stressful. Is that why you're calling? I asked gently. She exhaled. I was seated near your parents. I saw everything. I waited. They said you were only invited to the ceremony, she continued. But then Elena started asking questions. Yes, Janet hesitated. That envelope you left, it wasn't small. No, and you weren't seated. No, another pause. For what it's worth, she said, a lot of people noticed. That was the detail that changed everything. Not my anger, not my boundary, but visibility. People hadn't seen a tantrum, they'd seen a contradiction. A sister excluded. A gift accepted. A quiet woman refusing to stay quiet. The email arrived late one evening. From Elise Ashford. It was brief. Elise, I owe you an apology. What happened was not appropriate, and I regret not seeing it sooner. If you're open to it, I'd like to speak. Elise, I stared at the screen for a long time, then I closed my laptop. I didn't reply. Not yet. My mother waited another week before calling. Her voice was controlled, brittle. You didn't have to humiliate us. I took a breath. I didn't humiliate you, I said. I declined to be humiliated quietly. That's not how it looked. I'm done managing how it looks. She was silent. Then, softly, people are asking questions. I almost laughed. That was the moment I understood something fundamental. The discomfort had moved. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one carrying it. They were. I spent Sunday afternoon at Aunt Celeste's apartment, helping her prep arrangements for the week. She worked methodically, trimming stems, arranging colors. They'll try to reframe this until it stops working, she said. When does it stop? I asked. When you stop participating. I nodded. I didn't post. I didn't explain. I didn't defend myself. I let the story breathe without me correcting it, and slowly, inevitably, cracks appeared. Someone shared the seating chart. Someone else mentioned the badge. Someone else remembered Elise's face when she read the card. The narrative softened, then shifted. By the end of the month, my family still hadn't apologized. But something irreversible had happened. They no longer controlled the story, and I no longer needed them to. The quiet that followed wasn't empty. It was spacious. In the weeks after the wedding, I noticed something subtle but profound. My days felt longer. Not because I had more time, but because I was no longer spending it rehearsing conversations that might never happen, bracing for slights before they arrived, or explaining myself to people committed to misunderstanding me. I woke up without checking my phone for missed calls that never came. I went to work without the low-grade anxiety of family obligation humming beneath everything else. For the first time, my life was not oriented around anticipation. Elise Ashford called in early October. I didn't answer the first time. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was direct. Elise, I won't insult you by pretending this was a misunderstanding. It was a failure of character, on multiple levels. I'm not calling to fix anything. I'm calling to acknowledge it. I listened to the message twice. Then I waited 3 days before returning the call. Elise didn't waste time. I should have asked earlier why you weren't seated, she said. I assumed family dynamics that were convenient rather than correct. I appreciate you saying that, I replied. She paused. Vivian is furious with me, I smiled slightly. I'm not surprised. She believes you turned me against her. I didn't have to, I said. I just stopped covering. Elise exhaled. Exactly. She didn't offer money. She didn't offer access. She didn't offer reconciliation. She offered something rarer, witness. I saw how calmly you handled yourself, she said. That takes restraint most people never develop. I thanked her. When the call ended, I realized something else had shifted. I didn't feel smaller around power anymore. Lorraine sent a card for my birthday. No apology, just a neat paragraph about family being complicated and moving forward. I didn't respond. Robert sent a text a week later. Hope you're doing well. I replied, I am, nothing more, nothing less. Vivian said nothing at all. No anger, no justification, no remorse, just absence. And for the first time, I didn't chase it. I took a weekend trip by myself to the coast in November. Nothing extravagant, just a small inn, long walks, and meals eaten slowly. I realized how many decisions in my life had been shaped by the expectation that I would eventually need to make room for someone else's needs. That expectation dissolved. In its place grew something steadier. Agency. Months earlier, I'd asked myself what I wanted. Now I knew the answer more clearly. I wanted relationships where presence wasn't conditional, where silence wasn't punishment, where love didn't require erasure. Just before the holidays, Aunt Celeste handed me a small envelope. Inside was a photograph. The two of us at my high school graduation. She was cheering. I was smiling, uncertain but hopeful. I kept this, she said, in case you ever needed proof you were seen. I swallowed hard. I see you now, she added. Family, I learned, isn't always the people who raised you. Sometimes it's the people who refuse to let you disappear. As the year closed, I felt something unfamiliar but welcome. Not triumph, not revenge, alignment. My life was finally pointed in the same direction as my self-respect, and that changed everything. The year didn't end with fireworks. It ended with something quieter, something better. I didn't go home for the holidays. I didn't announce it. I didn't justify it. I simply made other plans. Aunt Celeste came down from Hartford with a suitcase full of sweaters and her loud, unapologetic laugh. We cooked together in my new apartment. Nothing fancy, just roasted vegetables, chicken. A pie she insisted tasted better because it wasn't perfect. We ate at my small dining table, knees almost touching, the window cracked open to let in cold winter air. No speeches, no tension, no pretending. After dinner, we sat on the couch with blankets and watched an old movie neither of us fully paid attention to. At one point, she looked at me and said, "You seem lighter." I nodded. "I stopped carrying things that weren't mine." She smiled. "That'll do it." No dramatic reconciliation came, no heartfelt apology from Lorraine, no tearful confession from Vivian. No grand gesture from Robert, and for the first time, that absence didn't feel like a wound. It felt like information. I finally understood something that had taken me decades to learn. Closure doesn't come from other people changing. It comes from you no longer waiting. I did write a letter to Vivian. I never mailed it. In it, I told her that I didn't hate her, that I understood how easy it is to benefit from a system you didn't create. That silence can feel safer than resistance. But I also wrote this: you chose comfort over courage, and that choice cost you a sister. I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. Some truths don't need witnesses. In February, Elise Ashford invited me to lunch. I hesitated. Then I accepted. We met at a quiet restaurant near the park. She arrived early, impeccably dressed, posture straight as ever. "You look well," she said. "So do you." She studied me for a moment. "You're different." "I'm not," I said. "I'm just no longer shrinking." She smiled. "That's exactly what I meant." Over lunch, she told me that things between the families had cooled, that Lorraine had been less visible in certain circles, that Vivian and her husband were adjusting to a reality less curated than they'd expected. None of it felt like vindication, just consequence. Before we parted, Elise said something I didn't expect. "You remind me of myself at your age. I wish I'd learned sooner that dignity doesn't require permission." I walked home that day feeling taller. Spring came. With it, small changes stacked into a life. I took a pottery class on Tuesday nights. I hosted friends in my apartment without worrying if the place looked impressive enough. I started saying no without rehearsing my reasons. I said yes only when I meant it. At work, I spoke up more, not louder, clearer. People listened. Robert emailed me again in May. Short, careful. "I think about you often. I hope you're happy." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I replied, "I am. I hope someday you choose to be brave." He never wrote back, and I was okay with that. Family, I learned, is not proximity. It's not shared history alone. It's not obligation disguised as loyalty. Family is who defends you when it would be easier not to, who tells the truth even when it disrupts the room, who doesn't ask you to disappear so they can belong. Family is Aunt Celeste showing up every time. Family is friends who celebrate your growth without feeling threatened by it. Family is the version of yourself that finally says enough. One evening, months later, I stood on my balcony watching the sun set over the park. Kids were playing. Dogs were barking. Life was happening without me having to earn my place in it. I thought about the gray badge, about the envelope, about the years I spent believing love was something you proved with sacrifice. I realized something then, so clearly it almost startled me. I wasn't abandoned that day. I was released. I don't know what will happen next with my family of origin. Maybe time will soften things. Maybe it won't, but I no longer measure my worth by their capacity to love me. I measure it by my capacity to live honestly, to choose peace, to walk away from tables where I'm not fed. If you've ever felt invisible in a room full of people who were supposed to see you, if you've ever been asked to give more while receiving less, if you've ever stayed quiet to keep the peace and lost yourself in the process, know this. You are not too much. You are not ungrateful. You are not difficult. You are simply done shrinking. And that is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of one you finally get to write.